Greetings, good people. Today's Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. It's the first Sunday in the season of Lent. Lent means spring, season of new birth, a season of having a new understanding and greater understanding of God's immeasurable love for us. So this year, as we read through the Gospel of Mark, we are especially reminded that Jesus outlines the good news with this phrase: "This is the time of fulfillment. The reign of God is at hand. Change your hearts and your minds and believe this good news." As I spoke about on Sunday, Jesus' encounter with the world is to help open up our hearts and minds to understand that God comes to us in so many different ways, that God's kingdom, God's reign, God's dominion, that which includes God, is all around. And then Jesus goes to demonstrate and to illustrate and to embody this truth. And so during the season of Lent, we are focusing on 5 ways that Jesus shows forth God's presence among us, God's reign, God's dominion, God's kingdom in our midst. And so the first way is through Jesus' ministry itself. If we look at Jesus and his ministry, he does lots of things, but there are 5 things that he continues to do regularly. And those 5 things is this, we symbolize or illustrate with this acronym that we use a lot at Prince of Peace, FI.F.T.H. F-I.F.T.H. And those 5 things that Jesus did was feed, include, forgive, teach, and heal. And so if we look, there are over 20 times in the New Testament, in the Gospels, that Jesus is eating with others and feeding others. Food is really important. Table fellowship is really important in Jesus' ministry. And he eats and feeds all kinds of people, all people, especially those that would normally be on the edges or considered outcasts. We also see, as we read through the Gospels, Jesus' ministry of forgiveness. There's over 64 times that Jesus speaks about forgiveness and enacts forgiveness, declares forgiveness, announces it, proclaims it, embodies it. So forgiveness is a huge part of his ministry. Teaching. There's over 40 stories of Jesus teaching, using specific stories to teach, often called parables, or other teachings that he's giving based on what's happening in the situation. And Jesus is constantly teaching people to help open up their heart and their mind to see the love of God in a new way. To see that it is, so much more present than we actually think or understand or know or believe. And then we can look at healing stories. Jesus did, that was recorded in the Gospels, probably 40-some healing stories where Jesus is announcing healing, bringing healing, right? Bringing people to a present moment of healing where they feel part of the community again, where they feel included, where they feel experience forgiveness, where they experience a new thing, a new teaching, where they are filled with food. And so these encounters of Jesus, this ministry of Jesus, of feeding, forgiving, teaching, and healing, all have this benefit of including people, of bringing people into greater community, the kin coming together in a kingdom. All of these things bring about this greater sense of being at union, in presence with one another, with God's people, with Jesus. And so we can look at his ministry, and specifically these 5 areas where he continually acts, and see there is God's presence. And we can see then, this is a pointer for us to see that Jesus is telling us that this is where we encounter God's reign, because God's reign is at hand. The time of fulfillment is now, and so it's a present is. So anytime we experience people being fed, people being forgiven, people being taught truth about life, people being healed, being brought to a sense of wholeness in the moment. Might not be permanent healing, but wholeness in the moment. And therefore feeling included, feeling a part of the community, feeling a part of the greater whole, restored to wholeness. What the Hebrew word shalom means, restored to peace, restored to wholeness. Jesus' ministry is about this. And so whenever we experience these things today and now, we are experiencing the kingdom of God. We are experiencing glimpses of God's presence alive, at work in the world. This is an easier way to see how God is present. God's kingdom is with us. God's reign is reigning among us in these times and places. And so I invite you to think for a moment, when have you noticed people being included? When have you experienced or offered forgiveness or noticed forgiveness? When has there been teaching that has opened you, your mind, your heart? And so, with this, I invite you to change how you see it, to see, when these things happen, God is present. And so may your heart be changed in that knowledge too. And may you believe in the good news. And then we want you to share about it. That's what Jesus says, to share about this truth that God is present among us in these ways. And so one of the things that Prince of Peace is doing this Lenten season is doing what we're calling POP, Prince of Peace PenPal Prayer Partners. Prince of Peace PenPal Prayer Partners. And we ask you to sign up for it. I'll have the sign up link in the doobly-doo if you've yet to sign up for it. It is still not too late. It is never too late in God's kingdom. And we'll pair you up with another person who's interested in having a prayer partner. And in our Lenten bag that's at the church out back in the blue box at the back entrance are 5 cards and envelopes. And there's a card for each week. And this is the card for this week. Week 1, nice and clear, right? And so God's presence in F.I.F.T.H reminds us of what we're focusing on this week. And on the inside are a bunch of questions. This one has actually the most questions in it, but we invite you to answer them. Short sentence. If you want to use a separate sheet of paper, that's fine too. But to fill it out and then to send it to your prayer partner. And one of the questions each week will have to do with the theme of where we notice God's reign breaking in, God's presence in the world. And this week is tell about a time when you witness God's love in fifth, right? Including forgiving, teaching, healing. You don't have to do all five. Just pick one. Just pick one and say, while working at the food pantry, whatever it might be, but something specific for you. And jot it down. You can tell a more elaborate story if you like. There is more space in the back of the card, or a separate sheet of paper. But just approach one of these. If you want to do all five, go for it, overachiever. You just want to pick one, that's fine too. But to share it. To share where you've recognized God's presence in the ministry of Jesus in the world alive now. In the world alive right now. And then mail that off. So we're also doing this other great thing during Lent is we're going to be assembling this giant banner. Looks something like this. It's made up of all kinds of triangles. And so in your bag are a series of triangles. And different colors, one for each week. Doesn't matter what week, what color, your choice. Pick one, okay? And then we're asking you on the bottom 3 inches, somewhere down here of the triangle, right? The bottom 3 inches, to use the fabric pen that's been included and to write. Now, I would use a different color than green on green. But then to write a sentence, a word, a short phrase, that illustrates how you notice God's reign coming at hand, God's presence in fifth. So that's the first week, fifth. So, right? So if I said feeding at the food pantry, you could feeding at food pantry, boom, at the bottom here. And then set it aside. We're going to collect all these at the end of Lent. Don't fuss with anything on the back. Please leave this backing on here, but write it on the fabric side of the triangle. Okay, so what's similar in the card, you'll tell much more in the card perhaps, but a short phrase or sentence or thing here, and so that we will have this amazing banner with all of these ways of God's presence, of how God's reign is amongst us amidst even this pandemic. And we will have as a memorial for us and for God to celebrate God's presence. So there you'll put your item there. And then, if you wish, if you want, also in your bag is one of these crosses. And so some people are choosing to make little triangles themselves out of photographs from a magazine or colored paper, construction paper, whatever. If you wanted to use white paper and color the triangles yourself, just make a whole bunch, but then you pick 5 special ones that you'll write at the bottom of one of them something, and you'll make your own banner. Now this particular one is, kind of fun and willy-nilly. It's just glued to the back of a piece of construction paper. You could, if you wish, you wanted to make it even, you could cut along the edge of the paper and have it all nice and square, or you could have kind of freeform like this, which is fun too. And then you can put this cross if you want to stain it, paint it, color it, leave it plain, whatever, and put it in the middle, kind of like our banner. And so you'll be able to create something in your own home, and we'd love to have pictures of them when they're done as we go along, as then we'll have this giant permanent banner in our worship space as well. So another little project that you might choose to do along the way. And then there's a bunch of other items in your little bag, and you can find out what those are as you check them out, from the devotional to a little Lenten map and all of that. So they're all there. So friends, each week on Sunday night, we're going to gather at 7 p.m. from 7 to 7:35 to have a little introduction to the theme. Now, we're specifically gearing this for our families and young people. So we're going to be doing the theme in super basic, right? But it's really fun to hear and watch our young people get this, and for us to be there and be present to help share our experience with them as well and our families. It's important to let them know that they are not alone, that we are part of this family together, and that we are sharing God's life and love in this together, and that it is our responsibility to pass on the faith to our young people, not my responsibility, our responsibility. So please come and get the simple introduction, be brought to joy with the kids, and as we present it to them, and Mr. Kirk leads us in music, and some fun music you know, and some that may be new to you. And then each Wednesday, I will give a little video like this one, getting a little deeper into the theme and some more adult contemporary pieces of it. And we'll go from there. Great. So may God's goodness and blessing and peace be with you as you recognize God's presence in F.I.F.T.H. Amen.